All right, new year. My resolution: make more videos, get better at making videos. And so, this is the first episode of What the Hell Are You Reading? Yay. Anyway, I've done a lot of sci-fi reviews, but depending on your definition of a lot, I guess. I'm going to try to open it up now and just do more general, what am I reading? Not necessarily worry about finishing stuff before I put together a review and some commentary so they can kind of relax a little bit and just reflect on a couple of the stuff that I'm chewing on at the moment. Um, for today's episode, we will be discussing horrible. Oh my god, it was bad. I was gonna do Tommy Knockers, but I enjoyed Tommy Knockers too much, and then I was gonna do It, but I enjoyed It too much. There's no excuse for this thing. I don't know what the hell happened here. It's hard because I like King, and I was always one of those people who was like, "Ooh, Stephen King, he sucks so bad. He's so popular. Why don't you read more Dante? Why don't you read Milton? Why don't you read some of the classic novelists?" And I resisted the temptation to get into King for so long just because I wanted to be a little literary hipster and, just be like, "Oh, he's too new. He's too mainstream." But honestly, I've enjoyed King so far. It and Tommy Knockers was very, very good. But something went wrong here. My first experience with Dreamcatcher was, I think I was in high school when I saw the movie with Tom Sizemore. Poor Tom Sizemore. Anyway, um, and I remember thinking to myself, sitting in the chair as I was watching this movie, that there was like one or two really good scenes. But all in all, I just couldn't get over the notion that what I was seeing was incredibly stupid. And just, it was like this visual assault of stuff that not only made no sense, but was just dumb. And I will say this, you hear these comparisons all the time. Oh, the book was so much better than the movie, to the point that that's just so cliche it's not even worth saying anymore. In this case, the novel really was better than the movie, but there's a reason. There were some risks that the movie took that just didn't pan out. But there was a lot about the movie that was very, very accurate. Anyway, enough of my general summary. Dreamcatcher was written after Stephen King's accident when he was hit by the car. This is probably one of the only things about the novel that actually works because you can tell King was writing this at a point in his life when he was in a lot of pain and he was very sick, and it comes out. He did the same thing with Tommy Knockers. And Tommy Knockers, you can tell there's a lot of alcoholism, there's a lot of drug use, and it just comes out really thick in that book. King is very good at being. It's like King so well that you're willing to follow him down these paths because you know what he's been through, and it makes it better. Um, the book is essentially, spoiler alert, the book is essentially an alien invasion in Maine. Why the aliens would want to invade a sparsely populated city in Maine, I'm not sure. Again, there's a lot of logical problems with this book, so just hold on. The book starts in this amazing setting where these friends are going hunting together. Man, I wish he had teased that out more. The hunting scenes in this book are so good, so full, that if this book had just taken place in the woods with four friends, it would have been much, much better. Instead, it gets very urban, very quick, as the infection or the aliens or whatever the hell is going on here escapes this very rural setting and gets into Derry. Derry, the same city that is the setting for It. Um, with King, it's so strange that it's always alien invasion. And it's alien invasion to the point that it's like every single alien movie you've ever seen, but just recycled in a really bad way. I mean, you have monsters tearing out of people's rectums. You have gray aliens with the big eyes. It's almost like it's a bad episode of the X-Files. And at first you're just like, what's going on here? In fact, I had a really huge problem with the basic premise of the alien invasion. The aliens are not themselves sentient beings. They're an infection. They're like a moss that grows. A collective intelligence. Again, the whole point of this invasion is that they want to try to infect all of humanity and turn them into themselves. I mean, that's the whole point of it, right? Why would you crash land? Why would you attack a place that is sparsely populated? It makes no sense, right? Um, and then there's another basic problem with infection that this book just kind of chose to ignore for a long time. Um, the infection kills you in the worst way possible, right? And the infection, which is called the virus or the Ripley, I'm not even going to get into that craziness. The infection, the worst part of the infection is an implant, which is a worm or a weasel, and it gets in your gut and it feasts and it eventually tears you apart. There's a huge problem with this. The infection doesn't work very well because it kills the host. When you look at major infections and disease, the ones that wipe out a huge section of the population don't last very long. Think for example the Black Plague. When you kill off large sections of your host, they don't last because it's so scary that you learn, hey, don't go to those places because you're going to die. If an infection is going to completely overtake a population, it needs to be subtle. That's why we still have versions of the common cold, but things like the Black Plague didn't really survive. It didn't stick around because when we got, you could attack that stuff because of how obvious it was that someone was sick. Yeah, of course, it killed a huge section of humanity, but it's not there anymore. I took huge offense to this. This is the only part of the book that works, actually. The infection as it exists in Dreamcatcher doesn't work. And there's a very, very specific reason why. But King doesn't play it up. We are the infection. The human race causes the weasels or the implants to become very, very, very aggressive, killing the host before it has the chance to spread. And you see this infection spread to other parts of the life form that's trying to take us over, right? That's a cool idea, that some type of sickness would come down from the stars, would try to infect us, and we turn it into something monstrous because we're human and we suck. I loved that idea. It's quite possibly the only reason to read Dreamcatcher, and the crazy, weird little hospital stuff that goes on with it that you can tell is part of like King's espousing of his horrible time after the accident. But literally, that explanation only has like a page, and it never goes anywhere. So the whole point with this is I enjoyed reading Dreamcatcher. I would not recommend it. It's quite possibly, I've heard from a lot of people on Twitter that it's one of the worst books that King ever wrote. And I'm no expert on King, but it was pretty bad. And I was along for the ride and I enjoyed it. There's a character named Kurtz. Why the heck would you name a commander Kurtz? And I know he's playing off of Apocalypse Now, and I know he's playing off of Heart of Darkness. But there's no reason to drag such an obvious connection in. It just seemed lazy. Another part of this book that actually did work was the fact that if you've ever seen the movie, and again, spoiler alert, the worst thing about the movie is the ending. And the Dreamcatcher, and there's all this convoluted metaphor and just crap about how Dudit's Cavil, or Douglas Cavell, or however you pronounce it, is their Dreamcatcher. Dudit's is a person who seems to have Down syndrome, although there's hints that it could be something else. It's very oddly defined in the book. Dudit's is psychic. He connects all these friends together. Ultimately, that's how they take down the protagonist in the end. The movie tried to explain that Dudit's was an alien. Never had any real reason to, get into that, because how did Dudit's get to Earth? What was he doing here? What relationship did he have to the aliens that were invading? It just never made any sense. In the book, Dudit's is just this mysterious psychic force that unites these friends together. His powers are never actually explained. In my opinion, that works infinitely better than some weird he's an alien excuse that they literally probably just pulled out of thin air. It made no sense. To leave it unexplained is a really cool device that can be really stupid when you don't use it correctly. But in this case, it actually worked kind of well in the book because you didn't necessarily have to know who Dudit was. He was just there. This happens a lot in King's fiction. Um, like, take for instance, It. King doesn't really work very hard to explain to you what's going on. In fact, it's clear the characters in the novel don't know what's going on. And that adds to the fear. You know that the creature in It is from another world. You know that it's something that's even probably from like another dimension. But you never really get a full description of what it is or where it came from. It was just there. That's creepy. He tries to do something similar in Dreamcatcher, and it just failed. It was never interesting. It never worked. It literally felt like a bad sci-fi rehash of every single B horror movie alien invasion you've ever seen in your life. It was really weird. It just never took off. And it was like he forgot what's actually scary. Now, the one scene you should look out for is when they go into the restroom when the first victim succumbs to the virus or the Ripley. That was legitimately scary. That was actually kind of cool. I enjoyed reading that part. And it was good because it was before you had all this explanation, all this exploration of the alien psychology. I don't know. For me, it was an okay read. I enjoyed it. I don't think very many other people will unless you are really diehard King. Um, it just really felt like a failed effort, and I hate to say that. I am reading The Gunslinger right now. Let's actually get a little bit more to the stuff that I am currently reading. Gunslinger. I'm hoping to do this one next week because I'm only into like chapter 3. It's good. And if I do this by chapter, I might be able to actually do some real hardcore critical analysis of parts of the book rather than trying to just do a whole of the whole book in a single review and just kind of lightly caress it. I'm also reading some philosophy, Jean-Paul Sartre, trying to get through Being in Nothingness. I've tried to read this book 3 times in my life, and I've never been successful. This time I'm going to do it, dang it. And Paulo Freire, I can't read just one book. I've got to be reading like 5 of them at a time. Also, in the future, really hoping to get a nice full review of Independent People by Haldor Laxness. This book was a gift by my father-in-law, and I'm almost finished with it. I'm excited to kind of talk about it because it's Icelandic. It's about an Icelandic crofter, a person who owns sheep. He's not a shepherd because they're his sheep, and his attempt to be an independent person. And he has a family, and he destroys his family just because of how big of an ass he is. Yeah, the greatest story ever told, right? I'm really excited about it. It's had some major boring parts, but it'll be a fun review. Anyway, that's the first episode of What the Hell Are You Reading? Got Dreamcatcher out the way. Hopefully we can take this in more bite-sized snippets as we move forward. Thank you. I love you all.